revealing the shocking truth of Deuteronomy. Dark secrets you've never heard before. The town was buzzing. Whispers crackled through the air like electric shocks, each one a promise of something bizarre about to unfold. Deuteronomy had sat quietly on the lips of scholars and preachers for centuries. But what if everything we knew was just the tip of a jagged iceberg? What lurked beneath the surface was darker, weirder, something that could pull the rug right out from under your beliefs. Shadows stretched across the dusty streets, concealing secrets so profound they sent shivers down spines. Hearts raced at the thought. In a small, unremarkable library, a dusty tome lay waiting. When flipped open, the pages seemed to hum with energy, each word a reminder of ancient prophecies long lost. What happened next shocked everyone who dared peek inside. Unusual markings began to reveal themselves under the flickering light of a solitary bulb. Words that seemed to pulse, alive with threat and promise. Could they be warnings? Curses? Each time the librarian glanced at the book, a chill danced up her spine as the air became thick with anticipation, an oppressive weight pushing down on her thoughts. Rumors spread like wildfire. A strange figure was spotted, cloaked in shadow, lurking near the library's entrance. Some said he was a messenger, others warned he was a harbinger of doom, and still others only felt an inexplicable pull to discover more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the townsfolk could feel the threads of fate tightening. Something was coming, a revelation that would shake the very foundation of their faith. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As darkness enveloped the town, the clock struck midnight. A chill ran through the air, and with it emerged a sense of urgency. Muffled voices echoed in the distance, a gathering of curious souls drawn inexplicably to the library. The flicker of candlelight cast sinister shadows on the walls, twisting the faces of those who dared to seek the unknown. Within the library, the open tome beckoned like a siren, daring anyone to uncover the mystery held tightly within its pages. Could anyone truly grasp the weight of what they were about to learn? And what would happen when the truth finally clawed its way into the light? The town held its breath, a collective heartbeat pulsing with anxiety and anticipation. Faces lit by the soft flicker of candles glimmered with both fear and fascination as they huddled together in the library, the dusty tome in the center seemingly glowing with an unholy light. That book was a Pandora's box, and everyone sensed it. A line was drawn between the curious and the terrified, and there was no turning back from the shadows. The cloaked figure stepped forward, a tall silhouette that sent whispers scuttling away like startled mice. He was a modern-day prophet, eyes shining with the kind of wisdom that comes only from having stared into the abyss. The room fell silent, save for the soft rustle of pages turning as he approached the book. The secrets it holds are not for the faint-hearted, he intoned, voice low and gravelly. Every eye turned to him, the air thickening with disbelief and fear. What do you mean? Someone in the back stammered, a hint of defiance creeping in. The truth of Deuteronomy has been buried for centuries because it reveals more than just laws. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. It uncovers horrors that once were horrors that can resurface if we aren't careful. The world may not be ready for this. A tremor of apprehension ran through the crowd. What did he know? What dark knowledge could this cloak-wrapped man possibly possess? They had come searching for answers, but now it felt as if they were teetering on the precipice of a nightmare. The librarian, who had felt an unshakable responsibility to protect the secrets of the tome, stepped forward defiantly. You have no right to instill fear in these people. She shot back, trembling yet fierce. She turned to the crowd. We can face this together. Knowledge is power. The figure's lips twisted into a strange smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. Knowledge, yes, but it also brings responsibility. Are you prepared to bear the burden? The townspeople exchanged glances, fear creeping into their minds like fog rolling in from the sea. Some began to retreat, others stood firm. The librarian knew they were at a crossroads. Hearts pounded wildly as they debated their next steps. "Let us see what the book has to say," one young woman called out, pushing her way to the front despite palpable dread. With bated breath, the gathered crowd leaned in. The librarian flipped the pages slowly, revealing peculiar illustrations that seemed to come alive in the dim light. Monsters and chimeras, symbols entangled in chaos. They gasped as the words began to unfurl before them. "This," she began, her voice shaky. "This isn't just history. It's a warning." Suddenly, the candles flickered violently as a wind rushed through the library. The pages turned rapidly, as if caught in a tempest. Gasps of confusion and excitement mixed in the air, like static before a storm. "Stop!" the cloaked figure yelled, but it was too late. The library shook, and with it, the very foundation of their reality began to crack. An icy scream erupted from within the shadows as the ominous realizations took root. The townsfolk scrambled for the exits, but the doors slammed shut with a resounding thud. Panic gripped them as they faced their narrator, the book, the man, the truth locked in a swirling vortex of dread and understanding. What had they awakened? The air felt electric with fear, and as the shadows deepened, whispers filled the silence. A darkness was stirring, far deeper than anyone anticipated. And perhaps they weren't merely on the edge of discovering a secret. They were standing at the gates of hell itself, where ancient power awaited those brave enough or foolish enough to venture inside. Each heartbeat resonated with a single thought: what would happen next? The trembling townsfolk were now prisoners of fear, their eyes darting from the cloaked figure to the glowing tome as if it could offer an escape. The walls of the library seemed to pulse, alive with a dark energy that twisted their senses. Shadows lengthened, stretching like gnarled fingers eager to pull them into the unknown. "Stay calm," the librarian shouted, her voice barely holding the fraying edges of authority. "We need to focus. The truth is in the book." But those words landed like stones in a still pond, creating ripples of panic rather than peace. The wind shrieked again, howling through the library, and the candles flickered wildly as though protesting against some unseen force. "Help! Let us out!" screamed a young boy, his small frame trembling. His mother clutched him tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. The library had always been a sanctuary, a treasure of stories, yet now it felt like a tomb filled with whispers of malevolence. The cloaked figure stepped closer to the book, his shadow stretching across the pages as he began to recite words that seemed to vibrate through the very wooden floor. "To those who awaken the old texts, beware the fires that consume the innocent. You've opened a door that should remain sealed." "What are you talking about?" a voice from the back shouted, anger now mixing with fear. "We want answers, not riddles." The cloaked man's lips curled into an inexplicable smile, revealing a hint of something so twisted it sent chills through the crowd. "Answers will come, but they may not be what you seek. Understanding carries weight. Are you ready for the burden of truth?" Just then, the book slammed shut, an echo of finality following the motion. Gasps erupted around the room, and a thick silence fell, punctuated only by the distant rumbling of thunder beyond the library walls. And then, it happened with a great force. The book erupted open again, pages flipping wildly until they landed on an illustration that glowed eerily in the dim light. It depicted a monstrous figure, a grotesque beast with multiple eyes and claws like daggers, its maw wide open in a silent scream. "What is that?" one woman cried out, clutching her partner's arm, her nails digging in so hard that it drew blood. "That is what you've awakened," the cloaked figure intoned gravely. "It has slept for centuries, imprisoned by fear and ignorance. You sought knowledge, but do you understand the price?" A strangled sound escaped the librarian's throat as her heart raced. An insistent thudding echoed in her chest. She could almost feel the beat of something beyond their comprehension, thrumming through the pages in rhythmic pulses. "Look!" someone yelled. The townsfolk turned in unison, and what they saw sent ice racing through their veins. The illustrations, once static, began to morph. Shadows shifted into shapes more twisted than their minds could comprehend. Figures from the drawings leaped to life, swirling in a torrent of chaos and despair. A scream rattled the air, slicing through the tension as the librarian fumbled for the book again, desperate for control. "This can't be happening. This must be a trick," she murmured, fighting her own spiraling panic. But it was too late. The darkness swirled and coalesced, manifesting into something solid and terrifying. A glimpse of the very horrors whispered in the wind, and in that moment, the air thickened with an unspeakable dread, and they all understood they were in the presence of something ancient and powerful, lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The cloaked man loomed heavy over the scene, eyes like darkened stars, witnessing the inevitable chaos unfold. What power had they awakened? With a final, trembling breath, the librarian shouted, "We need to close the book. We can't let it take us." But as their fate hung in the balance, a bone-chilling laugh echoed off the library walls. A sound that promised more than just chaos, it promised devastating revelations. How would they stop what they unleashed? The shadows loomed closer, the answer buried deep within those pages, pulsating with a dark allure. And time was running out. The cloaked figure's laughter faded into the walls, leaving an eerie silence that weighed heavily on the townsfolk. The librarian, heart hammering in her chest, whipped her gaze to the swirling shadows. They flickered dangerously close, faces forming within the darkness, expressions twisted in pain and anguish. "Stay together," she urged, her voice trembling as she fought to rally their courage. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted nervously, betraying the panic tightening like a vice around her throat. The grotesque illustrations now looked more than just pictures. They radiated dread, pulling at the edges of reality. Thousands of eyes blinked into existence, darting over the crowd, drinking in their fear. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as a whisper, soft yet sharp, wrapped around her ear. "You've disturbed the slumber," a woman shrieked, pointing at the display. "It's coming. Make it stop." Amid the chaos, families pulled closer, hands clenched. The shadows twisted and turned, a whirlwind of darkness pulsing with a life of its own, the energy feeding off their terror. "Control your fear," the librarian shouted, grounding herself against the grip of panic spreading through the library. "Our emotions give it power. We have to stop shouting," yelled a man in a panic, arms flailing. "They're right. We need to get out." He pushed forward, jostling the others, and chaos erupted once more. Eyes widened, breaths quickened, and shouts of desperation filled the oppressive AIRDS1. They surged for the exits, but the doors stood resolutely shut, a barrier of darkness that was becoming alarmingly palpable. The librarian, realization hitting her like a thunderclap, turned back to the glowing tome, its pages still flipping at an unnatural speed. "Listen," she cried, her voice cracking with urgency. "The book is the key. We have to read it to reverse what we've set in motion." The cloaked figure stepped forward, draped in shadows, his presence suffocating. "You think reading the words will grant you control? This abyss has its own hunger." Before she could respond, a surge of energy exploded from the tome, a blinding light that momentarily halted the wave of darkness. The horrific faces froze, suspended in shock, allowing the townsfolk a fleeting moment of clarity. "Now," the librarian urged, rushing toward the book, a desperate light igniting in her eyes. "We can defeat it if we know its name." She threw herself into the flickering pages, scanning frantically, heart pounding in unison with the thumping shadows around. The words twisted, tantalizingly close, but indecipherable. The cloaked man grinned wider, and for the first time, he stepped back, his glee palpable, as if the turbulent events unfolding delighted him. "Time is slipping away," he sneered, "and it craves not just knowledge but chaos." A wave of dread washed over her, and she felt the weight of the others' despair crashing in. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every terrified soul around her. Then a word glimmered in the swirling chaos. Something about it struck a nerve, like a chord vibrating deep in her core. "Famectil," she blurted, a wild guess tumbling from her lips. Immediately, the swirling darkness convulsed, a howl erupting from its depths, rippling through the library like a shockwave. Oh! It roared, the faces twisting in agony. The moment hung heavy as the darkness began to unwind, pulling back towards the book. "What did you do?" gasped an onlooker, eyes wide with fear and hope. "I don't know," the librarian gasped back, her heart racing. But in that slight pause, shadows collected strength again, the air crackling with energy, threatening to unleash the chaos once more. The dark figure's eyes glinted with malice, twisting into an expressive rage. In a heartbeat, the book exploded with light, fracturing the air around it. "Close the book," someone shouted desperately. "What if it is unleashed?" Yet, as they rushed forward, shadows clawed at them, sinister and relentless, an undertow pulling on their resolve. And just as a piercing scream shattered the terrifying hold, darkness surged back, veins of black energy shooting through the room. The librarian stood frozen, battling the whirlwind of choices. The book held the answer, but could it truly save them? What if, in their frantic zeal to fight, they awakened something worse? The darkness lingered. The battle had only just begun. Would they uncover the truth before it became their destruction? The librarian's heart raced even faster now as the scream echoed through the library, a sound of pure terror. She looked desperately around at the faces of the townsfolk, each one filled with fear and confusion. "We have to stay calm," she shouted, though her own voice betrayed her. Deep down, panic clawed at her gut as darkness began crawling apace towards the crowd once again. Hungry and oppressive, a flash of light flickered from the tome, its pages now writhing like trapped serpents. It had flickered, but why hadn't it offered anything more than fleeting hope? The encyclopedia of horrors in her hands didn't just contain the name of the nightmare. Perhaps it contained everything. What if every page was a portal to a truth they were not prepared to face? "A name is not enough," a man yelled, his voice thick with fear. "We need to do something. We need to fight." "Fight? Do you even understand what we're dealing with?" The librarian snapped back, fingers shaking as she desperately scanned the text. "This is an ancient malevolence. Reading it without knowing the consequences could doom us all." The cloaked figure chuckled darkly, his laughter like broken glass in the silence. "You pitiful beings. You seek to control the uncontrollable. How deliciously naive." Just then, shadows surged forward, wrapping around the legs of the nearest townsfolk, pulling them down as if the floor had turned to liquid darkness. A woman gasped, her terrified eyes wide, clutching a child to her chest. "Help us!" she cried. The librarian could feel her resolve wavering. "Focus on the book!" she shouted, even as her own mind raced with uncertainty. What if the stories they stumbled upon were just a prologue to something more dreadful? The energy in the air pulsed, shifting from fear into a dangerous desperation, a collective wish to escape the growing horror. The tome shrieked, angered by the commotion, and its pages snapped open violently, revealing more of the cryptic text. Each character glowed deceptively, shimmering with promises of forbidden knowledge. It was as if the book itself was responding, taunting her to unlock its secrets. But then she caught a line that sent chills racing down her spine. "To know Famectal is to hold death in one's grasp." Was this the truth they were after, or a harbinger of doom? A shivering silence enveloped the room as shadows pulsed dangerously close. In that brief moment, she felt the weight of their collective fears resting entirely on her shoulders. These were lives at stake, innocent lives. She knew she had to act, but what if her decision led them into a deeper pit of despair? "You're the one who caused this," a voice inside her screamed. "You brought them here. Now you must take responsibility." "Darkness requires sacrifice," the cloaked figure interjected, his eyes glinting with sinister delight. "One must give to take. You could spare these lives, but it would cost you." A fresh wave of horror washed over her, and she trembled, grappling with the implications of his words. Was saving them truly worth what might be extracted from her? She could feel the breath of shadows on her skin, eroding her will. Then, as if summoned by the tension in the room, The volume of the cries around her grew louder, mounting into a frenzy, pulses of fear electrifying the air. The cloaked figure thrived in their panic, basking in the chaos he had instigated. "Enough!" the librarian screamed, her voice cracking. "We don't have time to waste on fear. We need to take a stand." But would they? The shadows were thickening, threatening to swallow them whole. As she stood there, unwavering, she felt the weight in her chest, shadowy whispers encircling her thoughts, filling her mind with doubt. Then, from somewhere deep within the darkness, a voice emerged, rising above the cacophony. "Then let the sacrifice be made." In that instant, clarity struck her, a moment of impending revelation. But would they turn to her for salvation or allow despair to claim them first? As the climax of chaos surged, shadows brushed against her in a final challenge. What would she offer to save them? Would it be worth the horrific price fate demanded? The answer lay in the shadows mere steps away. But would she dare take that leap? The room seemed to inhale, a desperate stillness swallowing the frantic shrieks of the townsfolk. The librarian could feel the creeping dread knotting tighter in her stomach, but she refused to back down. A sacrifice, what did it really mean? Would she be giving up a part of herself, or something far more precious? A childish whimper pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. The woman, still clutching her son, was staring wide-eyed at the librarian, as if the fate of their lives rested solely in her hands. "Please," the woman pleaded, her voice breaking. "What can we do?" The villainous figure raised a dark hand, silencing the crowd with his presence. His gaze locked onto her, taunting, almost urging her to make the fateful choice. "You can save them, dear librarian, but at a cost that may chain you to darkness forever." His words wrapped around her like a suffocating vine, draping the weight of responsibility across her shoulders. Did they even know the horrors that awaited beyond the pages of the cursed tome? It was like holding a match over a vat of gasoline. She had to act, but how? The shadows writhed closer, slithering like pitch-black serpents, hungry for despair. With each body they ensnared, she felt the walls closing in, oppression thickening the air. "Get back! Stay away from them!" she screamed, waving her arms as if she could physically push the darkness away. But the shadows laughed, echoing like hollow laughter in a silent void. The cloaked figure stood tall, eyes glimmering with sadistic glee, feeding off the chaos. "Sacrifice, dear librarian. It's what you must have in mind to set them free. What will you give? Your blood? Your essence?" He took a step closer, his voice a seductive whisper. "Your heart?" The crowd gasped as one, horror washing over them, evident in their dismayed gazes. The librarian looked down at the trembling boy, oblivious to the nightmare enveloping them. Protecting him meant everything. But what price would she truly pay? In that moment, her eyes flicked back to the tome. A thought ignited within her. Would knowledge itself be a worthy gift? If the book was indeed the source of this evil, would consuming its secrets set them free? Could she turn the darkness against itself? "Knowledge may be the darkest tool," she whispered under her breath, but the truth could crush this malevolence. With fierce determination, she opened the tome wide, her fingers skimming over the pages. The words danced, sparking with energy as they read aloud. "Only the bearer of light can wield the truth. An unrelenting darkness shall bend to the brave." As the librarian spoke those words, a brilliant light erupted from the pages, flooding the room with piercing clarity. It stung her eyes, but she fought through, feeling the shadows recoil around her. The cloaked figure recoiled, his face twisted in a snarl of outrage. "Foolish mortal," he spat, the darkness swirling into a storm. "You know not what you unleash." But fear twisted into courage as she sensed the others rallying behind her. "Stand with me," she commanded, her voice strong now. "Together we can break this curse." As they united their voices, the power surged, resonating with hope against the tide of despair. The shadows writhed and screamed, thrashing violently, threatening to snuff out their fragile flame. But it was too late. The light grew fiercer, illuminating the dark corners of the library, casting away the creeping dread. Yet their unity came with a steep price. In a swirling vortex of light and shadow, she felt the book pulse, demanding payment for its revelations. As the relief washed over her and the townsfolk, darkness screamed, desperate to claim its due. But what would become of her? The tome glimmered ominously, revealing that this victory might not last without their sacrifice. Did she just unleash something even more terrifying? Her heart raced, pulse quickening with an unsettling realization. Was she merely a pawn, or had she seized control? The chilling voice of the cloaked figure echoed painfully in her mind. Your choice is just beginning now, Clarity. Danced dangerously close to madness. Would they face whatever emerged from this newfound power? As the shadows thrashed and bellowed, what lay in wait on the other side of their choice? Would it be salvation or doom? The librarian's vision blurred as the radiant light enveloped her, the warmth dancing against the cold grasp of shadow. For a moment, she reveled in the thrill of hope, but just as quickly, anxiety clawed at her heart. The shadows kicked up their fury, a swirling tempest of fury. She stood at the nexus of worlds, trembling between the light and the dark. Can't you feel it? The cloaked figure's voice cut through the chaos, reverberating with malice. You've only delayed the inevitable. The darkness is patient, and it will always collect what is due. His laughter echoed, chilling her to the bone. She had come so far but wondered if the cost would outweigh the victory they had wrested from the grip of despair. The townsfolk behind her stood staunch, yet their wide eyes betrayed their terror, holding onto her as their last beacon. Something, she whispered, piecing her thoughts together. Something is still lurking within those pages. The glowing tome pulsed, sending ripples through the air, spinning whispers that echoed inside her mind. The echoes turned into words, writhing around her thoughts, teasing hidden depths of knowledge. Feed me, and I will reward you, they hissed, enticing and cruel. Sweat trickled down her back, and her spine tingled with uncertainty. Was she willing to take this path? To wrestle with the tome while darkness encroached like vines around her soul? Her fingers brushed against the pages, searching for a fragment that could offer clarity. Would her curiosity burn her? Mommy? The trembling voice of the boy pierced through her turmoil. She turned, eyes meeting the mother's frantic gaze. Her heart crumpled as she realized the stakes. What if her pursuit of truth shattered the fragile peace they just reclaimed? We need to know, she thought, desperate to educate herself not just to save but to empower. Knowledge was power, but it could just as easily be destruction. Before she could consider further, the book flared again, a surge of power like a lightning strike. Shadows melted and thrashed, retreating yet looming, a dance of danger all around. The librarian gasped, the sentences sliding into clarity. Only one who knows the heart of darkness can overcome it. Then I shall know it, she cried, gritting her teeth. The decision locked in her chest like a splinter, but there was no turning back. The weight of the town rested on her shoulders, and the pages opened wider. She began to read aloud, each word spinning webs in the air. The library quaked, shelves rattling as shadows screeched, vibrating with fury. The darkness preys on fear, it thrives on despair. The truth spilled from the tome, lacing her words with a bright resonance. But as she read, the energy coiled tighter, transforming her voice into a beacon that captivated all present. By confronting your fear, you take the first step into liberation. Darkness cannot hold against the light of knowledge. Yet a sudden jolt rippled through the room. The shadows lashed out, retaliating with violent will, piercing through her resolve. Whispers of betrayal curled around her mind, echoing doubts that gnawed at her. Did you think every secret could be revealed without consequence? The cloaked figure hissed, eyes burning like coals. The chaos mounted, and it was clear that all her hopes hinged on this moment. Then the book demanded its tribute, threatening to engulf her if she could not bridge the chasm between truth and darkness. Would her resolve be enough? A scream filled the air, raw and desperate, silencing the world. The librarian turned, breath catching in her throat. A figure emerged from the shadows, a visage half hidden but familiar. What twisted form had the darkness taken? She stared, heart thundering. Could it be? As the truth unfurled, she felt it twisting, like a noose around her neck. The weight of expectation surged. Who was this figure, and how would their presence reshape the thin line of fate they balanced upon? Desperation pulsed through her, igniting a flicker of defiance. What would she risk to confront this shadow? That flicker precariously shaded the divide between her power and its destruction, and she knew her next choice would seal their fate. The shadows whispered furtively, and the figure stepped forward, half lit by the ominous glow of the tome. She recognized the familiar outline, the disheveled hair, the jacket that still bore the worn patches of affection. It was Daniel, her late brother, twisting and writhing in the grip of darkness. "Daniel?" she gasped, her breath catching as hope and horror collapsed into one. His eyes, once warm and inviting, now glimmered with the abyss, a haunting void that mirrored the same shadows she fought against. "Why have you returned?" she called, trembling. "What do you want from me?" The air crackled with tension. The townsfolk recoiled as Daniel's form shifted, revealing shadows that slithered upon his skin like dark serpents. "I'm not the one you are afraid of," he said, his voice a haunting echo of the brother she had lost. "This darkness, it calls to you, just as it called to me." "Please," the librarian shouted, desperation bleeding through her tone. "You can't mean to stay. There's hope. There's a way out." She raced the passage of memories flashing in her mind. Laughter, shared secrets, warmth. But every moment was tainted by the growing chill in the room. "Hope?" Daniel's laugh was a cruel mockery, a sound that danced with the shadows. "You think you can conquer what's been buried for centuries? The truth is, the darkness knows you better than you know yourself." Her heart tightened painfully. Those words sliced deeper than any blade. The lingering questions about her own past clawed at her memory. What truths had she hidden away? The tome hummed louder, and the shadows lunged violently, wrapping tendrils around her mind. "Knowledge comes with a price," they hissed, swirling maliciously. "Feed us your fears. Feed us your flaws." The librarian balled her fists, determination flooding her veins. "You don't own me," she shouted, the defiance reverberating through her voice. But in the corner of her eye, she glimpsed the townsfolk, their faces a mirror of unrelenting panic. Parents clutched their children, trembling, eyes darting between the unfolding horror and her commanded defiance. She was their lifeline, yet the weight of her brother's voice threatened to unravel her. "Let them go," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "This is between us." Daniel stepped closer, a sigh escaping his lips as if trying to hold back the tide of shadows. "Their fear is the key. To control this darkness, you must embrace your own." A flash of memory raced through her. The moment she had last seen her brother, lifeless, cold on the ground. The finality of it had ignited a fire in her heart. She had risen from that grave, haunted yet resolved, and now he was beckoning her back into the depths. "Don't you dare!" she screamed at the darkness itself. "I won't forget, but I will not lose myself to your despair." The library trembled, the walls shaking as if responding to her fury. Each thundering pulse echoed with the weight of the past. The book, her brother, everything unraveling in a frenzy. The shadows writhed. They hissed and screeched, their anger an electric charge. Then, just as she thought she was gaining ground, the clothed figure re-emerged from the enshrouded depths, its startled laughter penetrating her mind. "You've unleashed something far worse than you can imagine." A cold glare shot through her. The cloaked figure was mobilizing the shadows as if they were marionettes. "Do you feel the ripples of your choices?" the figure taunted. "You shall not confront it alone. You will be forced to face the truth about him, about your darkest self." The tome glowed once more, its pages turning frantically, almost screaming for a reckoning. The walls of reality tightened as she felt the pull of fate. Every doubt, every fear she had submerged threatened to surge. Could she truly pierce through this darkness and still save those she loved? Caught between the lingering memories and clamoring shadows, she gasped, "What must I do?" But in that breathless moment, the answer eluded her. An overwhelming silence enveloped the room, echoes of uncertainty suffocating. What price would this daunting journey demand? Would she sacrifice everything, including the life she had fought so hard for? The next instant, the tome erupted in blinding light radiating power, illuminating the room, a resurgence of hope or the herald of despair. And as the light surged, one question remained. Could she truly harness the truth, or would it consume her entirely? The blinding light engulfed the room, a wave of energy that tossed shadows aside as if they were mere wisps of smoke. The librarian shielded her eyes, feeling the warmth wash over her skin. Yet the glow tugged at something deeper, a well of familiarity mixed with dread. In that brilliant moment, the townspeople gasped, their earlier fear replaced by awe, as the air vibrated with an electrifying clarity. "This light, it's alive," whispered a woman at the back, her voice trembling, yet infused with an unexpected courage. But even as the light flickered, a part of her felt the encroaching darkness shift, pulsing with resentment. It lurked under the brilliance, seeking cracks to exploit. Daniel's shadowed form swirled closer, glimmers of despair dancing in his once tender gaze. "You believe they are safe?" he asked, his voice laced with honeyed malice. "Look closer. The darkness feeds on their hopes too." The librarian lowered her arm, driven by instinct. The light was strong, but a part of her had been deeply moored in the shadows, the whispers, the fears, the memories. "No," she cried, defiance pouring back. She had fought too hard against despair to allow it any foothold. Yet, as she cast her gaze over her community, uncertainty seeped into her soul. The faces of the townsfolk, once a tapestry of solidarity, began to distort in her sight, fear curling their features like bloomers wilting too soon. They were caught in the grip of doubt and terror. Her pulse quickened. "I won't let you take them," she shouted, but the darkness laughed, each desolate chuckle a twisted encouragement. Suddenly, the tome's light flickered, a pulsating heartbeat echoing the librarian's own racing heart. A piercing truth unfolded within her. "What is it?" she breathed out, as the shadows curled tighter around Daniel's form, revealing an inky void where a heart should be. "Join us," the cloaked figure taunted, its voice oozing with schadenfreude. "Join your brother, resolve what lies untold. Embrace the darkness. Embrace what?" She shot back, realizing that her footing on truth wavered. Was there a part of her willing to cave in, to dive headfirst into the shadows, simply to understand the roots of her brother's suffering? The chamber echoed with her doubt. The shadows were just as attractive as they were repulsive, enticing her like a siren's call. "Control over darkness comes with understanding," Daniel urged, his voice trembling with raw emotion. "You can't banish me without confronting what I became. Only then will you find a way to break free, or be consumed like I was." Every ounce of bravery she had pooled inside her shuddered at his words. The truth began to weave itself like a web around her, each strand drawing her into memories she had wished to forget. What if? She hesitated, grappling with her conflicting desires. What if the truth destroys the light? The tome reacted violently, sending ripples through the air. She felt energy pulse against her skin as if the ancient book held its breath, waiting for her answer. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. Would she embrace the knowledge they demanded, or push against it, risking everything? The light shimmered, vibrating with urgency. "Choose," it beckoned, casting colors across the cobblestone floor, illuminating faces wrought with pain and fear. Silence descended once again, saturating the room in suspense. Her breath caught in her throat as she weighed her options, the darkness pressing down like heavy chains, the light beckoning like an open door, and just as her resolve wavered, the shadows roared, a cacophony of despair that split the air. "The truth is not a gift," they hissed. "It's a curse. Do you dare look within?" Her future, tethered to that moment of choice, loomed just beyond grasp. What lay behind the door of revelation? Would she step forward bravely to face the truth, or would she falter and let the darkness swallow everything she loved? The question resonated ominously in her mind. Could she truly emerge whole, or would all she cherished become a faint flicker in the vast void ahead? The room fell silent as the librarian stood at the threshold of her fate, panting from the weight of anticipation and dread. The light and darkness clashed around her, both vying for her allegiance. She could feel the hot breath of shadows against her neck and the illuminating warmth of the book pressing against her hands. "Do you not see?" Daniel's echoing voice cut through the aspect of hope. "Every light must have its dark counterpart. To control it, you must embrace it. Stop!" she shouted defiantly, grasping the weight of those startled eyes around her. It wasn't just her own fears at play. The townspeople's hopes tied her to a larger fate. They couldn't be swallowed up in this abyss with her. "This isn't just about me, Daniel." "Ah, but it is," he mocked, slipping further into the shadows. "You were meant to carry the weight of this truth. You alone have the power to make the choice. It's time to decide. Light or darkness." Cold waves racked her spine. She realized he was right. In that moment, she understood she could illuminate a path forward or plunge them all back into despair. She inhaled sharply, pushing aside the dread that threatened to swallow her whole. As if sensing her resolve, the tome pulsed with urgency, illuminating lines that once danced in obscurity. "Only the one who knows fear can walk this line," the text whispered, its voice seeping into her consciousness, tearing apart layers of denial. "Let go, and you shall know." A visceral shudder coursed through her. What would it mean to offer herself up? Would it be just knowledge, or would it be far more an acceptance of all her deepest fears? The shadows whispered vile temptations, wrapping around her thoughts, while the light flickered defiantly against their powers. "Show me," she cried, thrusting her hands into the light, anchoring herself to it. "Show me what I need to see." The tome erupted into a blinding radiance, scorching away the darkness coiled around Daniel. For a moment, she could see him clearly, the boy she had lost, now trapped in a web of shadows. Behind him, the swirling chaos of memories unraveled, revealing moments she had long buried beneath layers of heartbreak and regret. "Do you remember the day?" His voice echoed, cascading through her mind like a deluge. "The last time we were together, you chose books over family over me." "Stop," she cried, cradling her head as waves of guilt crashed upon her. "I was just trying to find the answers to protect you, but it was your choice that sealed my fate." He pressed, shadows writhing around him. "You never faced your fears. You never faced the truth. Until you do, I will remain chained, forever twisted by darkness." The librarian stumbled back, breathless as realizations cracked open her heart. She had shunned her past, allowed fear to dictate her steps, and now decades of choices bore down on her shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "But I will face it. For you. For all of us." Suddenly, the tome vibrated with a furious energy, absorbing her anguish, and time seemed to freeze. The shadows twisted and screamed, wailing as the walls strained to contain the tempest raging inside her. The light grew brighter, purging the darkness near Daniel, unearthing deeper, hidden truths she had buried for years. Every mistake, every word left unsaid, every moment of silence will come crashing in, the shadows hissed. "Can you endure what you have hidden from yourself?" Her heart hammered in her chest, but in that moment, something shifted. Strength surged within her as she allowed each shard of regret to surface, each memory a heavy stone that once weighed her down. Pain gave way to clarity. This was her time, her reckoning. "Face it," she screamed into the void. "I choose to face my past. I will bring you back." The light refracted, shattering the shadows coiling tightly around Daniel, forcing them away. His form flickered between corporeal and ethereal. Anguish etched across his face, transforming into something softer, yearning and longing. "You are finally ready," he murmured, the shadows lifting slightly from his features as if they were pieces of faded fabric. The librarian inhaled, pushing her fears into the light. "Daniel, hear me. I choose you. I choose to remember. I will bear the burden of the truth, and we'll fight against this darkness together." In that instant, the library erupted in a blaze of light, illuminating every dark corner, flickering vibrantly against the insatiable shadows swirling around them. The townsfolk gasped as clarity saturated their thoughts, giving them strength. They, too, felt the chains of fear that had bound them. Together, she shouted, together we are stronger. Together we face this darkness. The townspeople rallied, echoing her sentiment, clutching hands, voices rising in a united front. Together, they rallied, the refrain cascading throughout the library, mingling with the pulsating rhythms of light. The shadows writhed furiously, screaming in agony as the darkness met the overwhelming brightness. With every united breath of relief, they began to dissipate. The library quaked, resonating with the force of their determination, and counters of chaos shattered like glass beneath the weight of their shared courage. Finally, the cloaked figure roared a howl of unparalleled fury as it began to fade, consumed in the blinding equality of light and truth. You think you have won? Know that darkness is always watching. It screeched before disappearing entirely. In the aftermath, the library stood still, filled with the fervor of their triumph and the dust of what had been. The librarian stood panting, hands resting on her knees, gazing at the townsfolk whose faces shone with both disbelief and joy. It's over? Whispered a woman, eyes wide with hope, searching for clarity amid the glow of fading perceptions. Is it truly over? The librarian straightened, the glow fading in her palms as the truth settled within her. We made a choice today, a choice that will shape our futures. We escaped the darkness, but we must always carry our truths, embrace our past. For with truth comes our strength. Daniel appeared as a silhouette once more, now lighter, brighter. You faced me, sister. Thank you, he said, his voice filled with warmth and hope, glimmers of light refracting on his shadowy edges. Now go, he urged, live, love, and carry this light in your heart. With the shadows lifted, the townspeople filled the hallways, drifting out into the burgeoning dawn. The librarian lingered for one last glance at the tome resting quietly on the table. As she closed it gently, memories swirled in her mind like leaves caught in a windstorm. No longer were they chains of despair. They were pieces of her mosaic, a reverberation of life's intricacies, wrapped in knowledge and love. Goodbye, my brother, she whispered as the first light of dawn swept through the doors, illuminating each face of her townspeople. We will carry your truth forever. And as they stepped into the morning sun, the librarian took a deep breath. New beginnings awaited them, illuminated by the truths divulged in darkness. She could feel it in the air, the promise of hope, the continuity of stories, and the strength found in embracing the unknown. Now was the time to build anew, for the power of their choosing lay ahead. Before the screen turns off, let me remind you, you need to subscribe to this channel immediately. You don't want to miss the next exclusive stories we curate just for you. Smash that like button now to keep the algorithm alive, and flood the comments with your reactions. What do you think of today's ending? Share your theories and feedback below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. It's time to spread the light. Your support means everything to us.